The authors raise the question of whether or not the growing commercialism of the internet may ultimately be a large threat to the internet's democratic potential. As it's developed, the internet has been a wonderful resource for people to express different points of view and to provide a forum for people to be exposed to different views on a broad variety of social and political issues. But the authors ask whether or not the growing commercialization of the internet, whether or not this commercialization threatens this potential of the internet to enhance democracy. Let me give you just one example of this with respect to search engines. And when we go online and we do a search for some particular topic, all right? Searches are great because they put at our fingertips this wealth of information. Let's say that we want to learn a little bit more about climate change, all right? Learn about global warming, right? So we just put in those words, global warming, climate change, on Google, and then a search brings up a list of possible resources for us, right? This is wonderful. However, some critics argue that these search engines are increasingly driven by commercial imperatives, all right? That Google makes a lot of its money from having sponsored searches, all right, where a company, an advertiser, will pay a certain amount of money to Google so that when certain terms are entered into a search engine, the advertisers' listings will pop up at the top of the search. All right, so I mean that's great for Google and the company that is sponsoring the search, but it raises, I think, broader social questions about if this approach to search engines winds up privileging certain points of view and information from certain parties while dismissing the views or information of other groups. In other words, when we conduct these searches that are sponsored by advertisers or commercial interests, does this lead to this kind of two-tier conception of information where on the top of the search results, we get all of these sites with information and points of view from companies that have paid Google to have their searches come out on top, where, while on the other hand, users wind up not being exposed to points of view or information presented by parties that have not spent the money to buy advertising on Google. And also then, does this mean that parties in our society that have more wealth or resources or money are then able to get their views more heavily promoted online? So if you're, a wealthy corporation or political action committee, all right, you can spend the money on these searches to make certain that when people do searches, people come across your views. But what about people in society that don't have a lot of money, that don't have the money to sponsor an expensive Google search? Are they kind of left out in the cold? Are they ghettoized? We have to think about whether or not those segments of our society that are less powerful, less wealthy, have less resources, are they kind of ghettoized online? And are their views left out in the cold? or on page 98 or 99 of a search. So one question that I want you guys to consider is what impact is this increasing commercialization of the internet having on our access to information? And does it undermine this principle of having this kind of wide open space for information? Here, I want to briefly touch on the last point mentioned on this slide, that that those that are online may ultimately wind up just communicating to other people who already share the same feelings and opinions as themselves. Right? I think this is a really important concern, and it's kind of ironic. You know that when you think about the internet, one of the great things about it is that you've got like this, almost infinite access to all these different points of views, all these different ideas, that there's almost this infinite diversity. But some scholars worry that increasingly, when we go online, that we don't sample all of these different points of view and different ways of life. But rather, increasingly, what we do is that we tend to only go to sites that reinforce the same things that we already believe, all right? That we go to sites that simply serve as kind of like this echo chamber for us, that just reiterate what what we already know or what we already think or feel. In the realm of politics, some scholars worry that, for instance, political conservatives tend to go on websites that express similarly politically conservative views. The political conservatives tend to avoid going to websites that express liberal or left-wing views. And that the same is true in the reverse, that a lot of times political liberals will go to sites for left-wing opinion, news, and analysis, and strongly avoid any sites that are associated with conservative views. So again, for both conservatives and liberals, are both groups of people just limiting themselves to only going to sites that reinforce what they already believe. Now, to some extent, I mean, this is okay, because you wind up, taking part in becoming part of an online community where you share certain values and ideas. But on the other hand, is there a problem with restricting yourself to only those sites or sources that reinforce what you already believe? And when we think about how this plays itself out in society, does this affect our behavior in the rest of our lives outside of the online realm? If we're only talking to people like ourselves online, does that make us less willing to engage in dialogue with people that we disagree with? Do we wind up becoming more hostile and aggressive towards people that have different points of view or a different worldview? And I don't think this is restricted to the internet. I mean, if you think about TV, for instance, all right? Conservatives tend to get their news from Fox News, all right? And to some extent, liberals get theirs from Rachel Maddow, MSNBC, and there isn't a lot of crossover, all right? people that watch Rachel Maddow don't watch Fox News a lot unless they want to mock it. All right, and so here too, do people wind up living in this kind of echo chamber, hermetically sealed from people that think differently from themselves? And does that affect our society more generally? I mean, think about what's going on in Washington right now, all right? Where there's this extreme hostility between congressional Democrats and Republicans. And it's very difficult for the two political parties to agree on anything, all right? Does that stem in part from our more divisive culture where we're all kind of sealed off in our own bubbles? So, what do you think about this? And I also want you guys to think more personally about this. For yourselves, do you tend to pay more attention to sites that just reinforce what you already believe, or do you go to sites that express a different point of view? I mean, frankly, I'll be quite honest with you and tell you that most of the sites that I go to, they more or less do tend to reflect what I already believe. So, what about you?